we will create this floating text as you can see. Okay, so let's get into this. Go to hierarchy. Okay, right click on it and create an empty game object and name that to something like floating text or float text, something like that. I'm going to call it something like floating text. Okay, and go to transform of that game object, right click and reset the transform. Okay, so we're gonna create an empty child game object to this game object. So right click on floating text game object. Okay, right click on it and create an empty child game object, name that to something like text child or something like that. I'm going to call it something like text child. Okay, so what we're gonna do in the text child, we're gonna add text. Okay, we're gonna create animation for floating text separately, so that's why we have created this parent game object, or else the animation will be weird type of. Okay, the local position of that animation will be weird, so that's why we have created a parent game object first, and we have created this child game object. Into that child game object, what we gonna do, we're gonna add text mesh component. Okay, which will show up the text. So select the text child game object and hit add component and find their text mesh. Okay, find their text mesh and select that, and we're gonna go over to and we're gonna select for now one. As you can see, it's blurry text. So what we need to do, go to character size, select point one and go to anchor. We're gonna select firstly we're gonna go to font size, we're gonna make it something like 80. Now it's visible as you can see, and we're gonna select anchor to upper left to middle center. Okay, and we're gonna select font style to bold, and we're gonna go over to font field and we're gonna select monogram. I'm gonna leave in the description of this font, you can go check that out. Okay, so we're gonna increase the font little bit, something like 100. As you can see, now it's pretty fine. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make the animation. Okay, so we're gonna make the animation, it will go up and it will increase. Okay, that we will increase the size of this font. So select that child game object. Okay, not the parent. Select the the child game object and go to animation tab. Okay, if you can find the animation tab, you just have to go to in the window top. Okay, then animation or control 6 as well as the animator tab. So select this textile game object once again and hit this create button. Before that, create a assets folder, sorry, animation folder into assets. Okay, by just right clicking on it, create folder, name that folder to animation. Okay, to keep thing organized. So select that animation tab once again and select this textile game object and hit this create button. So we have created, we're gonna firstly go over to assets, and assets folder we have created this animation folder as you can see. So double click that to open up, and we're gonna create a subfolder. So right click. Okay, then new folder, name that folder to something like text underscore. Okay, text underscore animation, and then hit. Okay, hit and double click that to open up that folder, and we're gonna name this animation to something like floating text. Okay, something like that. We're gonna name this to something like floating text, and then hit enter. And what we're gonna do, we hit this record button to record the animation, and we're gonna go over to 1 second, basically 1 frame. Okay, we're gonna go over to 1 second, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna increase the y size. Okay, y position. Okay, so select the textile game object, increase the y size in the transform position. Okay, as you can see, or select this move tool and drag it into top, as you can say, like this. And we're gonna go over to font size. Okay, font size, and we're gonna increase by something like 150, I guess. 150. Now it's fine. Now if we play the animation, as you can see, it will be played like this. So hit this record button once again to capture the animation. Now we have captured that animation. So we're gonna go over to project tab once again, and we have created that animation. Okay, into text animation subfolder as you seen, and we're gonna select that animation clip, and we're gonna uncheck this loop time, so the animation will not be looped. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna add a component to this textile game object. Okay, basically we're gonna add a script. That script will responsible for, it will pick up a random number between 1 to 101. Okay, it will pick up a random number and it will show up in the text. So we also need this text component, text mesh component. Before that, we're gonna create that script. Okay, so go to a script, right click on it and create C# script, name that to something like floating text. Okay, floating text, and select this child game object and drag that script. Okay, drag that script to this add component section, or here you can find by directly typing it. Okay, whatever you have named it. So we have named it for floating text, so double click that to open up in Visual Studio. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna remove this update function, we don't need that. And so to set a random number to text, okay, as you can see, if we can set 100, as you can see in the scene view or game view, as you can see, we can set any value we like. Okay, so we need this text mesh, and we're gonna go over to this text and we're gonna set the random value. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it 1 as it is. So we're gonna go over to script once again. So we need that text mesh, then we're gonna, okay, we need the text ms, then we're gonna set the text in random value. So we're gonna make it public, so we can set in inspector that will be text mesh as used in text mesh component. And you can call it text mesh. Okay, I'm going to call it something like floating text, something like that, and close that off with semicolon and control s on your keyboard to save this and head into Unity. Okay, you will able to see in floating text script that field will appear which says floating text, whatever we have named. So what we're gonna do, we need to drag this component to that text mesh field component. Okay, then we will have this text mesh, then we can set the value over the text over here to any number we like. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. So just wait for to compile. So as you can see, floating text which says none, empty. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna drag this floating text to floating text field. Okay, text mesh, and now we have the text mesh. Now we can set the value over here. Okay, the text. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use this start function, and as you know, a start function get called when the game starts. So we're gonna do it over there, and it call just one time. So in the start, we're gonna set a random number. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set floating text dot text. Okay, we're gonna set equal to, so basically floating text dot text basically means this text. Okay, over here this text, and we're gonna set equal to we're gonna set equal to random dot range. Basically this function, okay, this function will take the number you want to include, and as a and the second number you have to pass which will not be include. So we're gonna type 101. So this random dot range will pick up a random number between 1 to 101. Okay, between 101 1 to 101. Okay, it will pick up a random number and close that off with semicolon. As you can see, this is an integer value. Okay, we getting an error, as you can see red line underline becomes. So basically this is an integer value, and the text over here is a string value. Okay, this is a string and this is integer, so that's why it's not setting directly. So what we need to convert this integer value to a string. Okay, so we just have to type dot to string, so it will convert that this integer value. Okay, integer value to string, so it will pick up a random number. Let's suppose it will pick up, so 1 to between 101 to 1. Okay, so let's suppose it will pick up 50, so this will be 50, so the text over here over there will be 50. Okay, so over there will be 50, but with this function will take a random number. Okay, it will pick up a random number between 1 to 101. Okay, so control s on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity, and it will set up in start function. Okay, as you know, start function get called whenever the game starts, so it will set up itself a random number. It will pick up a random number in the start of the game. Okay, so control s on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity. You will able to see whenever we start the game. Okay, whenever we hit the play button over here, the text over there will be an random number. So if I hit play over here, okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see, you will able to see So as you can see, it's 36, it's pick up 36. Basically it will pick up a random number. So what we're gonna do, in front of this we're gonna add a plus sign, okay, to make things cool. So what we have to do, we're gonna go over to script once again. In front of that number, whatever it pickups, we have to type quotation, and we're gonna, in quotation, we're gonna use this plus sign, and we have to add this to our random number. In whatever random number pickups, let's suppose it's pickups 40. So 40, in front of that 40 will this sign will be added, okay, the plus sign. You have to type in quotation, and you have to add that to random number, okay. So control s on your keyboard to save this once again, and head again to Unity. So whatever number that random dot range function will pick up, in front of that plus sign will be add automatically, okay, because we have type in quotation. You can type any symbol you like. For making cool, I just replace that with plus. So just wait for to compile, and if I hit play, okay, if I hit play, in the top you will able to see that number, whatever random dot range function pick up number, random number, in front of that plus sign will be added by default, okay. So as you can see, it's pick up 23, in front of that the plus sign has added, as you can see. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make prefab of this game object. So select the parent one, okay, not the child one. Select the parent, and make a prefab folder in asset, and select the parent game object and drag it into the prefab folder, okay. Now if I delete from the scene view, okay, if I now delete from the scene view, I can just directly drag into the I can directly drag into the scene view, okay, as you can see. So we're gonna spawn this number from our enemy, okay, top of the enemy. We're gonna spawn this number from our top of the enemy. So we also we need this floating text game object, okay. We need this game object. Also we're gonna create a point. From that point we're gonna spawn that number. So we're gonna create so I'm gonna delete from this scene view now, or hierarchy, and I'm going to select this enemy game object, right click on it, create an empty child game object, okay, and name that to something like enemy head, or enemy head point, or text point, something like that, and move it over in the top of the enemy. As you can see, I already have moved it. Select an icon in the inspector. You can select any icon you like, okay, and after doing that, hit overrides, then apply all to change in the prefab as well. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna spawn that floating text game object. As you seen, we're gonna spawn that top of the enemy. Basically we're gonna spawn that game object from this point, okay, from this point. So what we need this point, as well as we need that floating text game object, okay, so to spawn. So we need that game object, as well as we need the point from where we want to spawn. So we're gonna spawn from top of the head of enemy head. We're gonna spawn that, okay. So we're gonna open up the enemy script. So double click that to open up enemy script. So whenever we take damage, we're gonna spawn that, okay. So whenever over here, as you can see, we calling that take damage function. Basically we taking damage, so we're gonna spawn that, okay. So what we have to use, we have to use this instantiate function, okay. Instantiate function, we have to use this, and this function will take the game object. Firstly it will take the game object you want to instantiate. As you know, we're gonna instantiate that floating game object text, okay. And the second argument, it will take the position, basically from where you want to spawn that text. And the third argument, it will take the rotation. So we're gonna pass quaternion dot identity, basically means it's no rotation. So firstly we need to assign those variables before we instantiate or spawn. So we're gonna make double slashes to comment this instantiate, and then we're gonna go over top of the class, and we're gonna assign, and we're gonna make it public, so we can set an inspector. So firstly we're gonna we have to type game object. As you know that floating text game object also an game object, so that's why we have to type. And you can name it something like floating text prefab, something like that. I'm going to call it something like floating text, okay, floating text prefab game object, something like that, and close that off with semicolon. And we also need that point from where we want to instantiate. As you seen, we have assigned it in the top top of the enemy head a spawn point, so we need that point. Okay, and we're gonna make it public, so we can set in inspector. So we have to type transform for position, as you know, and we're going to call it something like text point, something like that, or enemy head, and close that off with semicolon and control S on your keyboard to save this, and head again to Unity. So we need to assign those variables. Firstly we will able to see the floating text game object prefab will slot will appear. What we need to drag the prefab from that prefab folder, floating text game object prefab. Okay, so we will have the prefab, as well as we need to drag this text point field to corresponding layer. Okay, so we will have the point as well as the prefab game object, what a floating text game object what we want to instantiate or spawn. So as you can see, floating text prefab which says none, basically empty. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna drag that floating text prefab game object to that field, and we're gonna drag text point to text point field. Okay, from now we have the point from where we want to instantiate or spawn, as well as we have the game object we want to instantiate. Okay, now we're gonna go over to script once again. Over here, as you can see, whenever we trigger with bullet, as you can see, we are taking damage. Before we take damage, we also gonna instantiate that. Basically we're gonna spawn that prefab floating text. So as a first argument, we're gonna pass that game object floating text prefab game object, and the second argument it will take the position. So we're gonna pass the text point position, as you know we have assigned it dot position, and the third thing it will take the rotation. So we're gonna type quaternion dot identity, basically means it means no rotation, and close that off with semicolon and control S on your keyboard to save this, and head again to Unity. So whenever the enemy takes damage, that floating text prefab game object will be spawned from top of the enemy head, because we have created text point and we move it top of the enemy head, so it will spawn right there. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. Okay, so just wait for to compile, so you will able to see that. So just wait for as you can see that text popping out from enemy head, but it's not destroying. Okay, it's not destroying. As you can see, the text is staying in this in view. So what we're gonna do, if I open up the floating text prefab game object, as you can see, if I select the textile game object, and if I go to animation tab, as you can see, after 1 second we completing the whole animation text game object. We're going to destroy that whatever we have instantiated. So we're gonna go over to script once again. As you can see, we have instantiated that floating text prefab game object. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna store this game object with into another container or another game object. Okay, so we have to name game object, and we're gonna call it something like temp for temporary, and we're gonna set equal to this. Basically whatever we have instantiated, we instantiated that floating prefab game object, we're storing that game object into this temp variable. As you can see, it will work like container. So basically we are storing another game object, that whatever we have instantiate. So what we're gonna do after that, we're gonna destroy that container, or whatever we have stored, we also gonna destroy that after 1 second, as you've seen. So destroy function will take the game object you want to destroy. So we're gonna pass the game object which is temp, the container, and the second thing, we have to specify the time, after what amount of time you want to destroy. As you've seen, after 1 second, basically we completing the whole animation. So that's why we're gonna pass 1 second and close that off with semicolon and control S on your keyboard to save this, and head again to Unity. After 1 second, that game object will be also destroyed. Okay, so whatever we have instantiated, we storing that game object to that temp variable, temp game object. Basically it will work like container. So we also destroying that container after 1 second of time. We have used destroy function, and then function will take the game object you want to destroy, and you can specify the second argument, the time. And if we hit play in the top, we will able to see that if the enemy takes damage, the text game object will floating text will be spawned, and after 1 second it also be destroyed. Okay, So now if I, as you can see, after 1 second it's also destroying. Okay, as you can see, I hope you get the basics idea of it. Okay, and lastly, thanks for watching this video. Okay, goodbye.